So in this video, I'll be showing a phaco surgery in a small pupil. This is a 2.8 millimeter incision that I have made. It's about a stage 3 cataract, so slightly larger incision. Two 1 millimeter stab incisions for the side port are being made. My choice of pupil expander is a B-hex ring. This is not a very rigid pupil, rather it's a floppy iris. So the B-hex ring works well in these cases. Once the forceps is held, the first flange is engaged in the iris tissue. That is done through the main port, and then from one side port, the other flange is held. This device is extremely flexible, so it's pretty easy to manipulate in the anterior chamber. Finally, the third flange has to be held, and you can see, in spite of pulling it due to its flexibility, it quite easily goes and engages the iris. So now we've got a 5.5 millimeter well dilated pupil, and a capsulorhexis forceps is going to be used to make the capsulorhexis. Now, I aim to just keep the rhexis margin just inside the 5.5 millimeter pupil, so we are making a capsulorhexis of about 5 millimeter here. The rhexis is now complete, fairly well centered and circular. Proceed with hydrodissection using 25 gauge cannula. So I prefer doing a multi-quadrant hydrodissection. Looking for the wave, now it seems to have come. Uh, we'll proceed with Phaco. Now this is a 2.8 millimeter Phaco tip uh, from Bosch and Lomb. This is the microflow tip designed by Dr. Graham Barrett, and with the left hand I'm using a Siebel chopper for a vertical chop. Once I impale the nucleus in the center using the phaco tip, the vertical chopper chops fairly easily. This is a stage 3 cataract, but it doesn't appear leathery, so chopping is not that difficult. The aim here is to make about 5 quadrants using the vertical chop technique. That is the third quadrant made, and these are the last two segments. And now in the same Phaco 2 mode, each fragment is going to be aspirated in the iris plane. It's a slightly hard cataract, but it's going on pretty regularly. So as each piece is emulsified in the iris plane, I prefer dividing each piece into two smaller fragments so that it's easier to emulsify. Half the endonucleus is out, and now it's the last two fragments that are left. Now, while emulsifying the last piece, uh, the vacuum is lowered and it is done slightly slower than before so as to ensure that posterior capsule is not damaged during this. Cortex removal is being done with bimanual irrigation aspiration cannula. I prefer using bimanual in cases of slightly smaller pupils so that it's easier to get access to the cortical matter. And cortex also seems to be coming out fairly well. Once one half is done, the hands are switched over and cortex is removed from the other side as well. That completes the cortex removal. Just some amount of the viscoelastic is being washed out. I prefer to use a 25 gauge cannula to just hydrate and polish the posterior capsule. The IOL is being injected now through this 2.8 millimeter incision using wound assisted technique. This is a hydrophilic IOL. The aspiration cannula is just being used from the left side. Dialer is used to put the IOL and just to ensure that it doesn't engage the B-hex ring while the IOL is being placed in the bag. I use an irrigation cannula to just wash out the viscoelastic from below the IOL by hydrating and irrigating, just touching the undersurface of the lens. Now, once all the visco is removed, I prefer removing the B-hex ring using irrigation. Now, I put in the B-hex forceps from the main wound and hold one of the flanges and gently disengage it from the iris. And once one is done without releasing it, holding the same flange, I just pull it out through the main wound. Sometimes some amount of iris tissue may prolapse, but you can see how well centered and round the pupil is without much damage even after removing the B-hex ring. So B-hex ring is relatively atraumatic for the eye. That completes the surgery.